Hi, everybody. This is day 1490. 1490 days since Richard was premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss. We still don't have his remains. To this date, we still don't have his remains. And I want to repeat that because I think that's very, very important for everyone to understand. Richard was premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss, forcibly removed from his barracks room and murdered on Fort Bliss. This is really, really important, and we don't have his remains. So, and I want to explain to you that 4 years we've been going through this, and we have absolutely gone from what in the world happened and going to the 5 possibilities of Richard, walking away, getting injured somewhere, being murdered, the suicide issue, and what was the other one? There was one more. And, all of them, the evidence points overwhelmingly to one. And not just one piece of evidence, but 4 years of collective evidence. And, for a long time I was saying Richard was murdered, right? Then it's Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. Now it's Richard was absolutely premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss. So as the evidence mounts, we say things very definitively on this live stream. And absolutely, Richard was a whistleblower that was unjustly, severely, and continuously retaliated against for his reports on criminal trafficking. We have more and more people coming forward, giving us more and more information and about the criminal trafficking, about his reports. The IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday. We've said that over and over and over again. Yet there is more to support all of that. And don't forget that the IG right now is Lieutenant General Donna Martin, who was the Provost Marshal, who led the Dog and Pony Show fake Task Force Find Richard Halliday meeting, where they showed up out of uniform with, get this, 15 plus agencies there, and they're showing up out of uniform without an op board. Yet they paid for 15 plus agencies to be there. The worst and best paid billionaire drug cartel member didn't have 15 plus agencies. Okay, this is why to get that information out is so important. And with Leilani Hart's confession, her first confession that was notarized, of course, her family member that she was giving sexual favors to helped coach her to, and he was a CID agent at Fort Bliss. Yeah, that's how she got the unauthorized access. Okay, that's where, there's security breaches all over the place. And she is connected, Leilani Hart's connected to Thomas Kane. And the information surrounding Thomas Kane is just mounting and mounting. He has a real problem on his hands, and so does Ann Ogle. And I haven't mentioned her very much, but she's CYS, right? She's Child Youth Services, and with the LLCs, with the connection with Leilani Hart, with the connection with Thomas Kane, the Director of Emergency Services. Who said Richard was a good meal for the coyotes. Now, any director of emergency services that used to be a police officer, that used to be an officer in the United States military, and says something like that when he is in charge of the security of Fort Bliss, meaning that he is working very closely with the likes of Jules Tuganon Chan for health and safety, right? With the Walmart mass shooting case, with the emergency intake center, which 85,000 missing unaccounted for minors, and now we have Senator Hawley coming out and saying no, there's 300,000. No, there's 291,000. This is not 10,000. This is not 5,000 children, right? That's a huge story. 5,000 children, 1,000 children. Maybe people can wrap their heads around that number better in order to drive our authorities to do their duty, right? But we're talking about such a huge number that I think the human brain just shuts down when you say 291,000 children unaccounted for, unaccompanied. Think about it, just unaccompanied. There's 291,000 unaccompanied minors in 3 years? What? What? I mean, that is absolutely crazy. Something's going on. And for them to be missing on top of that is absolutely crazy. So I think, we need to really stay focused with what's going on here, because Richard submitted, and of course, dirty agent Marlon Soto, he's a very dirty agent. He's so dirty. Okay. Dirty agent Marlon Soto Hernandez. And I'm not saying that all CID agents, lead agents are dirty. I'm just saying that the El Paso, Fort Bliss, CID lead agent Marlon Soto Hernandez is a dirty agent, right? And why is he even there? He's from that area. Why is he even there? You can't be a lead agent on Fort Bliss and El Paso when you're from that area. There's too many conflicts of interest, right? There's too many conflicts of interest. He needed to be sent somewhere else to serve, not right there in his homeland, right? His home area, the borderland. And, so with all of the evidence, all of the circumstantial evidence, all of the irregularities, you go to Marlon Soto when you say, hey, I know here's some paperwork where Richard is submitting an inquiry to you to become a CID agent and how to do that. And then we have more and more people coming forward saying Richards was taking classes with a degree, a major in criminal, we've gotten criminal science and we've gotten criminal justice. Okay, was it criminal science? Was it criminal justice? Right? So we also, are getting more and more veterans coming in. We have multiple. that absolutely corroborate that Dallas Hart, which is Leilani Hart's son, was Richard's platoon leader. Okay, we have it on record. There's no doubt in our mind because the Army, to, to, uh, you know, prove that he was not the platoon leader, could produce a platoon leader. But the platoon leader is not produced. And when we got there, his whole unit wasn't produced to us. His whole unit, I mean, even the first sergeant, wasn't willing to speak with us. Even Captain Park, even Captain Yoshida, where were they? Where was his unit? They should have all been willing to speak with us, but they weren't, and they were quickly disseminated all over the place. They were quickly relocated. They quickly got out, and that's because Richard was premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss. And I'm thinking about Austin Hawke, who was murdered in his barracks room. And let me tell you, those soldiers, not one of them came out of their room to help Austin Hawke. Not one. Where is the esprit de corps? A former sergeant got unauthorized access to Fort Stewart, to the barracks, knew exactly where he was going because he was the former sergeant that Austin Hawke blew the whistle on. And Austin Hawke was in his room at midnight, and this former sergeant got unauthorized access, went into his room. Who was his accomplice? The CQ. The CQ was his accomplice. The man with the keys. The man with the keys, the soldier with the keys to the rooms, was this former sergeant's accomplice, and went into his room. There was no forced entry, and proceeded to murder by stabbing him to death. Most of all the stabs, I believe it was close to 40 stabs, just in his head and neck area. It was so bad. It was so bad because Austin Hawke fought like hell, like a true warrior for his life. Going into the closet door ripped off, blood everywhere. Everywhere. And I'm so sorry to say this, but I'm making a point. It was a brutal fight. It was a brutal murder. It was loud. There were screams because Austin Hawke got a few hits back. That's why there was the perpetrator's blood in his room. And during that time, not one soldier came out of their room to help Austin Hawke. After the perpetrator left and Austin Hawke lay there with his head just barely on. His head was barely on. They had to hold his head onto his body when they picked him up. And he laid there for hours, hours and hours, and not one fellow soldier called 911, called the military police, went into that room to lay a blanket over him, to show him humanity, to show him esprit de corps, to show the Medal of Honor ethos. Not a one. I'm mad as hell about that. Because what that demonstrates from what we know what happened to our son, Richard Halliday at Fort Bliss, is that the leadership has failed. The leadership has failed. And there is no doubt in our mind that Richard, after what he went through, the stupid, the prime suspects in our son's case are fixated on this case day in and day out because they're facing the lethal injection. That's what's going on here. If you want to know why they keep on building sites and whatever, trying to frame a false narrative around Richard that we have been debunking and debunking, well, not we, the evidence, the truth has been debunking it, debunking their absolute madness. Absolute madness. It was so absurd. Because Richard was reporting the criminal trafficking, and they tried to discredit him. They tried to frame a narrative around him like they do with all of these other lies. Satan is a father of lies. I mean, these people are so dark that they are, and I mean spiritually, hard-hearted, that they frame these false narratives around the very people that are the whistleblowers, that are the fighters for righteousness, that are a light to the people. They want to put out the light, but they can't. They can't. And they keep trying and trying and trying. You know why? Because they're facing the death penalty. Thanks be to God that Texas has the death penalty, the lethal injection. Thanks be to God. And Leilani Hart's latest confession, I mean, the first confession is not enough. It's enough for me to understand what Richard was reporting. When she is notarizing her confession, making it totally official, you can't undo a notarized confession, okay? And then have it accepted by the FBI. And it is implicating, confessing that her family is involved with child pornography, and that's not enough. Then they're involved in incest, and that's including Dallas Hart as an active duty soldier, right? So child pornography and incest for Richard's platoon leader. Look, Richard had plenty to report. Plenty. And what about the sexual assault in Leilani Hart's master bedroom of a 7-year-old Fort Bliss soldier's dependent? Right? That's a security breach. And then she has Hart childcare with James Hart, who she just said is involved in incest, with a 7-year-old being assaulted by multiple members of her household in her master bedroom. That's her first confession. And then that they have Hart childcare, and she's saying that her husband is illegally buying weapons and then threatening her with them, holding holding the weapons up to her, threatening her life. And he has Hart childcare, and they are involved with Ann Ogle of the CYS, and they are involved personally with Thomas Kane, and they are involved with Jules Tuganon Chan, Mr. Hacker. I didn't call her a hack. I didn't call him a hacker. He calls himself a hacker, but safety and health officer. And they are involved with this criminal group with the PAO, Mr. Nick Nuffziger Brown Bell, active duty, harassing us, threatening us, impersonating us, making these false accounts so that they can intersect and infiltrate and tamper with witnesses, tamper with information coming out, get ahead of the truth narrative, the light. They want to get ahead of the light so that they can put it out, right? Or it'll dim it, right? Because they're facing the death penalty. They don't want accountability. And they do this day in and day out. I know why we do it day in and day out, because we want Richard's remains. We want to hold them accountable. We want them to face the death penalty. We want them to face the lethal injection. Because what they did to Richard was to say that they were the security, that they were the ones that were obligated to care for Richard, and yet they unjustly retaliated against him severely, constantly, for months, organized a setup to get even with him, to discredit him for not wanting to go along with their criminal trafficking, not wanting to go along with their lies, their life of lies, their life of crisis, their life of manipulation, their life of chaos, their life of hate, their life of destroying humanity. And you see that in this Leilani Hart's confession, where she wants to destroy humanity, right? She wants to make me totally inhuman. They've done that with Richard. They've done that with our witnesses. Like, you're just a piece of furniture. They do that with this whole, with our soldiers, so that they can get away with giving unauthorized access to unqualified individuals that want to commit fraud, that want to impersonate, that want to rob, that want to steal, that want to kill. That want to, satisfy whatever sexual, or use their sexual favors, their sexual cult, in order to control people. Because they videotape, you see. They videotape. You were there. You were there in that house when that 7-year-old was sexually assaulted in my master bedroom. You were there when we filmed this child porn. You were there when we forcibly removed Richard from the barracks. You were there when we dismembered him. You were there when we buried him. And that's how they film it, they document. They're very, very good at this stuff. And more people are coming forward because I think they're sick of it. They're sick of the darkness. They're sick of the light being turned off or attempting to turn it off. They're sick of the darkness. They're sick of the cheating. They're sick of living that kind of chaotic life. Because let me tell you, Leilani Hart, in this new confession, she's throwing her husband under the bus. She's throwing Bob Moore of El Paso Matters under the bus. She has a history of throwing people under the bus. How do I know that? Because they kick her out. They kick her out. They don't want her anymore because she's toxic. They kicked her out at Park University. They kicked her out at the housing area in Hawaii. They kicked her out of the CVA, the Combined Veterans Association. She got kicked out. These veterans, she was manipulating them. She was doing these false reports against them. And so it's no wonder that veterans are coming forward. It's no wonder that her victims are coming forward. It is no wonder that what happened at Park University, I mean, she was brutal there. They had to kick her out. Can you imagine? What is she doing on there anyway? She doesn't need to be on Fort Bliss. Have they kicked her off of Fort Bliss? They should kick her off of Fort Bliss because she's toxic. And, why wait? She's got this long history. Before Richard was even born, she had a convicted criminal history of the lies, of the manipulation, of the harassment. Even her family filed a complaint against her. They didn't want her. They kick her out. They kick her out everywhere. I wonder if the Mormon Church kicked her out. Have they kicked her out? I don't know. Because I know that she has caused trouble in the Mormon Church, the Mormon congregation. They tell me not to call it a church. That's called a congregation. Okay, whatever. She's up to no good. And in this confession, it is absolutely crisis. She's an absolutely mental crisis, trying to frame the narrative of Richard's murder because she does not want to face the death penalty. And it's so ludicrous that what it does confirm is that she's absolutely, her and her son, Dallas Hart, are absolutely prime suspects in the disappearance and murder of Richard Halliday, the whistleblower, reporting criminal trafficking. Who has the criminal record? She does. Who has the criminal record for child crimes against children? the Hart family does. Who has, is it a criminal record? Well, it's documented. It's documented in their, um, in what we have as documents and at the FBI. And now in this confession. And it's totally crisis mode. And so when, we get other leads, and we have gotten other leads, and we appreciate every lead, and we look at every lead. But if the leads are inconsistent, if the leads have holes everywhere, if the leads wobble or don't have anything to back them up, then we can't use them. We can't use them. And, so we appreciate leads. We appreciate those willing to follow us day in and day out. But if those leads have holes, we owe it to all of El Paso, all of the 291,000 unaccounted for children. Unaccounted for, they're alone. When I think of 291 unaccounted for children coming from all over the world, what is going on? We owe it to finding out what is happening. What was Richard reporting on? That is our focus. Why was it so big? Why did that string that he pulled by his reports pull so hard and so deep that his case is connected to the Walmart mass shooting case? Why is it that so much has been tried to cover up the light, to misdirect the light, to put mirrors to deflect the light, whatever, so that people can't see it, meaning the truth? Why has so much been done to create a false narrative when the narrative is clearly, with all the evidence, so powerful that even the Board of Inquiry could not say anything else except for the truth? And it's corroborated by so much evidence. We provided a lot of that, most of that evidence to them. And then they have evidence of their own. And what was the decision? The declaration of death on Fort Bliss. You just don't die on Fort Bliss and have no remains and be anything else but a premeditated murder and cover-up. That is the only option. That is the only truth. So the declaration was a declaration that Richard was premeditatedly murdered, and there was a cover-up. There was a cover-up. And that cover-up included getting rid of the evidence. A methodical, look, the people in this group are absolutely connected to mortuary affairs, to surgical skills, to Mario Raskin Ortiz. If they want a death certificate, there is absolutely a possibility, a way of how they can get it. If they want access to confidential files. Those involved in this criminal group have access. They are the rogue group from the original response team. They have access. Jules Tuganon Chan was bragging that he had access, that he had firsthand experience with the Walmart mass shooting, that he was absolutely in a leadership role when it came to the emergency intake center, which means he had absolutely a relationship with Director of Emergency Services Thomas Kane, who absolutely tried to dehumanize Richard, who had access to Park University, who absolutely has tried to dehumanize me. And they never responded to the severe manipulation and false allegations that cause so much pain in Park University, the lies, these absolute lies against professors and even the director of Park University, many of them. And where was Thomas Kane then? Why didn't Leilani Hart got kicked out of Park University? Why didn't they report her to law enforcement for her false reports to law enforcement? Why wasn't she arrested? Especially since she has a long criminal history dating back before Richard was even born, of conviction of lying to law enforcement. And she has a history of insurance fraud. That I can go on with all of the information, the sex cult stuff, her connection with Dreams Cabaret, which I hate to even say that name because it sounds like some kind of mattress, but it's not. It's adult entertainment. Very sexual entertainment. And her multiple affairs and her connections through the LLCs. And Richard is reporting criminal trafficking. And there's more. And I always miss it, I always, when this goes off, I think, oh, I should have said this. I should have said that. And I think when you have someone that's very concerned about this case, like Deliris, she's very concerned. She's been from close to the beginning, right? And very concerned about this case. We owe it to her. We owe it to El Pasoans, to anybody that's running for office, to inform them about the mountains of evidence, of truth, so that they will not be misled, so that they will not, be hoodwinked, be hypnotized by the absolute crisis of lies that Leilani spews from her spleen, which means they're bloody lies. They cause harm. They cause injury. And I remember Jay Paulin goes, "What do you mean my words cause injury? They're injurious. They're, violent." Yes. Think about it. Richard was forcibly removed from the barracks in a very violent way, and not one soldier helped him. Austin Hawke was violently stabbed in his head and neck. So many stabs. I think I was told upwards of 40 stab wounds, and fighting like hell for his life, and not one soldier helped, because the false narratives, the lies are not being, they're not, she's been allowed, Leilani Hart has been allowed to spew from her spleen. She's been allowed to manipulate. She's been allowed to have unauthorized access. She's been allowed to hypnotize with false narratives, to be part of this group that impersonates, that infiltrates, that gets the information so that they could, that's why they impersonate, right? They impersonate so that they can, what do you call that? Intercept the information so that they can manipulate the narrative. And Bob Moore, what was he thinking to get involved with this group? Is it not enough to be an editor of El Paso Matters? Is that not enough for you? I mean, your wife is with UTEP, with the publication over there, Borderland or something like that. Is that not enough? You want to get in with this group, in this criminal group, and use Leilani Hart and Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia and Belen Rocha as reliable sources? What is he thinking? What is he? What is El Paso Community Foundation to even allow someone like Bob Moore, who makes such bad decisions, that is so hurtful, to be an editor of something so influential as El Paso Matters? And lie about, well, in our case, our hero, the hero of El Paso, the hero of the unaccompanied children, the hero of those that have lost people from fentanyl, the hero of the human traffickers, the hero of those that are violently killed because of all the weapons trafficking and ammunition trafficking over the border. The hero of those that are being taken advantage, the veterans that are being taken advantage, because we have documents where Leilani Hart is absolutely saying that her husband has abused his power and has used his position at the VA, the Veterans Affairs, Pueblo, veterans, disabilities, to use the information there fraudulently for financial gain, misused his position. That's along with, if they're going to, you know, uh, be unlawful in one way, then they are unlawful in another way, and unlawful in another way. So you've got all kinds of sexual uh, illicit activities, and then you have um, the financial and the theft and the abuse of power. And so if you're wondering, why are they trying to frame the narrative against this family when they've already got the declaration of death? They just want to know where their son is. And that's because they're facing the death penalty. Because these are the very individuals that are the prime suspects of the murder and disappearance of the remains of our son, the retaliation. And they are absolutely in crisis mode. That's the big. There's a lot of takeaways from this newest confession of Leilani Hart, and we're addressing all of that, addressing all how she just threw Bob Moore under the bus. He's going to be like, what? And then of course, James Courtney Hart, um, you know, she has a long history of manipulating people. And, it gets to the point, it gets so bad, the betrayal gets so bad that they finally kick her out. I mean, even Dallas Hart told me over the phone that, he didn't think too highly of his mother. He said a lot of derogatory things. So, when you're supposed to be rallying, and here he is, a platoon leader. He knows better. He knows what. Well, maybe apparently he doesn't know what esprit de corps is. He doesn't know what Medal of Honor ethos is. He's a prime suspect in the murder of our son Richard. So no, maybe no, he doesn't know. And so the the big thing that getting away from the crisis, the crisis, because the lies are just so absolutely insane. But one thing that comes through is that there's fraud, there's financial fraud, that there's insurance fraud, that there is the misuse of confidential um, and protected information, and they're misusing it for financial gain. This is like the theme in there. And the violence. The violence is also a theme. And so, she has to start on a basis. So she's experienced a lot of violence and a lot of fraud. She's coming from a place of violence and fraud. And so that is also evidence, again, on her being a prime suspect in this case. So there's, an ongoing evaluation, analyzing this, and we are absolutely turning it into the proper authorities. Absolutely. because the more people that understand what's going on, that see through this, um, well, we're getting law enforcement calling us about Jules Tuganon Chan. They're they see through this. They're inquiring with us. So they're starting to call us, and we're very grateful for that. And we're very grateful. Um, the theme for tonight is there's only one possibility, and that is Richard, whistleblower, forcibly removed, murdered, cover up. That was brutal. So much so that you have retired first sergeant coming in with conflicts of interest, trying to form the narrative right away. You have the captain crying. Why is he crying? You have the removal of certain people. Real quick, let's put you somewhere else. You have false narratives given to the law enforcement. You have Tavita Nusa losing his badge, which we have that absolutely confirmed. You have Dallas Hart being Richard's platoon leader. And, so it gets a little clearer every day. Every day. It's become very clear. One choice. And were remains found in Mexico? Yes. Remains were found in Mexico. Were remains found in the United States? Yes. Were there multiple grave sites? Yes. Yes. So I owe an apology to a couple people that were right on target at the beginning. But there was so much false information going on that we had to look at all of it, right? We had to look at all of it and chip away all the lies in order to, with our charts, with our calendars, with our screenshots, with the witness testimonies, and then more witness testimonies. And you can't hide Nadal Baim, right? Even though he's up to no good and he's with that group. But you can't hide his statement, shh, which, wow, that was something. That was really, and you can't hide the looks in the eyes of the investigators and everything when you're talking about this, right? I can't describe to you everything that is evidence, these strange things that happen that you're like, okay, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. So we want to stay focused on the truth, and we really appreciate, and really I'm addressing Deliris's statement. We appreciate her brainstorming, but we owe it to her to tell her the truth. She's been following, being supportive. We owe it to her to tell her it's a done deal. Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. And it was premeditated. And there's no other option. Now it's accountability. It's accountability. And Leilani Hart just gave us a huge gift with this confession in crisis. And it shows that she is afraid and will do anything and say anything. I mean, she's already being haunted by Richard. Clearly. I mean, I feel it. I feel, and I know that Richard is there and he's asking for justice and he's showing us the way. And she's facing the death penalty. I don't know. I think there's a divide that will divide her from Richard forever and ever. That's my belief. But maybe she doesn't know that. So she's facing, and you know, at the beginning of all of this, we're like, oh, we don't know what happened, this and that. Look, it was so brutal. And there's so much that has happened from the beginning that all of the negotiation, that's water under the bridge. The other negotiation is, come forward. Come forward. That's really free your mind. I mean, her mind is in total crisis. So, thank you. Sorry, I forgot to even put this on to see. I mean, her mind is in total crisis. Okay. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you, Claudia. 200 unaccounted children a day were coming through El Paso daily. Can you imagine? Like, what are parents saying? Oh, just go, leave. No. Everyone in Richard Halliday, direct leadership and indirect leadership failed Richard, in my opinion. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But they did more, didn't they? They didn't just fail him, they participated. Dallas Hart, Richard's platoon leader, is the prime suspect. Tavita Nusa, the CID agent right there in Fort Bliss, is a prime suspect. He's the one that has the surgical skills. He has surgical skills. He has direct contact with Park University with this CID internship. He has direct contact with Leilani Hart. He's a family member. He's the one that gave Leilani Hart the unauthorized access to Richard's file. Why? Was it to hide evidence of the death, the murder and disappearance of Richard? Or was it to manipulate, get information to commit fraud for financial gain? Or was it for both? Because she's pretty bold. And she wasn't in so much of a crisis. She was in like a chess game at the beginning, making moves with that July 22nd, 2020 affidavit. She was making moves, right? But this latest is absolutely crazy crisis mode. Mentally crazy crisis mode. And the only reason for that is because she's facing accountability. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. And Team Fun Richard Halliday, um, we're doing our best to give you uh, what we know, what we absolutely know. And it's a lot. And so thank you for trusting us. Thank you for continuing to give us more information. Thank you for coming forward. Um, this is super important, right? It's super important. And just say a lot of prayers and please share. The more people that know, the more that they can understand this huge case. Danielle Dixon, 100%. Yes. So, and they failed. You know who else they failed? They failed every soldier on Fort Bliss. There's still security breaches, right? They failed the children because Emergency Intake Center was on Fort Bliss. It was on Fort Bliss and El Pasoans. Because don't forget, El Pasoans had to, they were praying to get some work. And things were booming, right? Until the COVID came along. Um, and yeah, let's, and they needed to have daycare for their children. And the intake center, especially with the because okay, I want to make this clear too, because there's been some back and forth with this. The emergency intake center on Fort Bliss, a huge one, that was created in 2021, but there's been so many before that. The human trafficking, the unaccounted for children, has been happening for a long time. It didn't just start in 2021, it escalated. I mean, it really escalated. So, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been a problem before that on the border and in El Paso and on Fort Bliss. It escalated. And I think that Richard's complaints and the Walmart mass shooting, um, yeah, that's all connected. It's all connected. So thank you so much. God bless you. They failed everyone. Yes, their whole duty, everything. Thank you so much, Danielle. Um, and we're very active behind the scenes. I think we put out uh, 11, filed 11 more communications, I want to say, um, just in the last day and a half. So we are very active behind the scene, and we're trying to be very strategic. You saw that with the SB4. You saw that with the FitFam El Paso LLC. We're, we're really looking at how we can get results, meaning Richard's remains, um, the exposure of the prime set, get accountability. You know, they always like, oh, well, you need to investigate, you need to investigate, you need to review, you need to investigate. Okay, review, investigate, and okay, fine, but we need results. We need the accountability because more and more people are getting hurt. And so we're really focused on the accountability and, of course, um, setting the record straight. So thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing.